Thank you, Vice Chairman Casey, as well, and members of the committee. Really appreciate it. We'll begin with Sandy Hodges here, and she will start us off.
Once again, thank you so much, Representative Cootie and the board, the committee here. I'm Sandy Hodges. I have 17 years in the classroom teaching high school. I am certified in AP US History. Currently, I am Wagner County Assessor. I come to you today because I have some real grave concerns about the new framework in AP US History and also how it came about. As we all know, history has not changed. It's happened. But the College Board's new framework takes a global, transnational, as they call it, look at U.S. history. In the new framework, the United States is no longer the city on a hill described by John Winthrop, nor is it the place where Martin Luther King Jr.'s I Have a Dream speech is celebrated. In their new framework, the nation is dominated by racism, greed, oppression, ever since its founding. The new framework shifts away from the traditional AP US history emphasis on our founding documents and the principles of individual, economic, and religious liberty. We're here today to ask you respectfully that the state legislature, after hearing what's going on in AP US history, would take a stand with us against this new framework. And I would like to introduce Carolyn to you.
Thank you. Actually, I'm a veterinarian from up by Woodward. And at one time, I taught, a few years back, at OSU Veterinary School, and Lee Denny was one of the students.
One of my teachers right here.
All righty. We'll get going here. Which button do I push?
Excuse us just a minute.
We've got a quick PowerPoint to go through here, and then we have a special guest. We do, but we don't want you to look at them yet.
All right. We're going to ask Mr. Krieger.
We used to teach.
Dr. McClarty, this gentleman's name is Larry Krieger, is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
And he is an advanced placement teacher from where?
New Jersey.
New Jersey. And he's coming to us by Skype.
That's right.
So
Hi,
if you look at
everybody.
the screen, and can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Yes, we'll be very quiet, and
good.
you talk very
Yeah.
loud.
That's
Lee.
great.
Okay, I'll go ahead and get started with this quick opening for you, a little outline of what we're going to talk about. A-Push is what we're calling this quickly. We will have probably 5,000 Oklahoma students in this year and over 500,000 nationwide. And as you all know, the College Board is a private organization. It controls the SAT college entrance exam tests and the AP placement courses, which there's about 38 different ones. But it's a private organization and receives a lot of public taxpayer money. 7-8 million annually. They have a $800 million budget with $1 million towards lobbying. And they're unaccountable. So this is unaccountable to the public. Big business. Lots of money involved with testing, as Mr. Lopez mentioned. A new test means lots of money for the company. So the problem now is the new framework. The new framework for this year. Previously, from 1984 to 2013, we had a 5-page framework, so to speak, an outline, 5 pages. And again, as Mr. Lopez said, teachers have flexibility with an outline such as this. But now we've gone to 148 pages of detailed instruction, and everything in here is what's going to be on the test. There's nothing else. This is it, day by day, what the teachers are supposed to do. So there's no room for flexibility that allows creativity. All right. The old framework also emphasized American exceptionalism. And the new one really focuses on different themes, and it's a political ideology. And we still don't know for sure who wrote them. We have heard that 5 college professors and 8 high school students were involved, but we don't really know who wrote them. So now, according to historian Dr. Ralph Ketchum, the focus of the course is on the bad and the ugly of America, not the good. As America as a dystopian society, as you can see, full of violence, racism, injustice, and greed. We have a quote from Dr. Larry Krieger, who's on looking at this, and he states the principles of the Constitution are replaced with an emphasis on race, gender, class, and ethnicity. As a result, these decisions, the students will have no John Winthrop City Upon a Hill speech, just a brief mention of founding fathers, and no Declaration of Independence, if you can imagine. Gone. Nothing about Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., no Lincoln's Gettysburg Address, and no John F. Kennedy. In the World War I and II history, we'll have no heroes, no sacrifice and victory, no greatest generation, and no Holocaust. Why is the question? Why? Apparently, it seems it's because of diversity. Students need to build empathy more than learn factual history. So, also keep in mind that this new framework does not meet the Oklahoma U.S. history standards. And no Oklahoma teachers were involved, no colleges from Oklahoma were involved in creating the framework. So, high schools...
Can we ask questions as we go along?
Do you mind, or would you rather finish?
I only got one slide to go here.
Okay.
Yes, he
I
is
just
the
had a
expert.
question about slide.
So I'm saying high school courses shouldn't be held hostage by a small group of revisionist college professors. All right? Or we're going to let our exceptional American heritage vanish from the classrooms of Oklahoma. Okay. Now, Sandy.
We have the honor of having Dr. Larry Krieger on Skype with us. He is a renowned educator whose books and workshops have helped thousands of students achieve high scores in the SAT and the AP tests. He has 35 years of teaching to both all urban, rural, and suburban schools in North Carolina and New Jersey. He teaches a variety of AP subjects, U.S., world, and European history, U.S. government, and art history. In 2004, 5, and 6, the College Board recognized Larry as one of the most successful AP teachers. Most all of his students of any ethnic background, all ethnic backgrounds, are able to achieve a 4 or a 5 on the AP exam. Mr. Krieger also is the founder of Inside Test Prep and has authored several U.S. world history books, AP Prep, SAT Prep, books that are used throughout the country and across the world. It's my honor to introduce to you Dr. Larry Krieger, who we have on Skype.
Okay.
Dr. Krieger.
Thank you. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yay, that's great. Well, the previous speaker, Carolyn, asked a really good question, didn't she? She said, why? Why is this framework riddled with racism, violence, hypocrisy, greed, imperialism, and injustice? Well, in the next few minutes, I'm going to provide you with an answer to that question. Now, the College Board says they have an answer. They said, well, these are concepts, quote, typically taught in college-level survey courses. But is that true? did they really get this framework from the colleges? Now, we need to go back in time, and we discover that there were actually two committees. The first committee had just 5 professors on it, and they worked on themes and skills, but it was actually more important than is commonly realized. And then there was a second committee, and this committee had 4 professors and 5 high school teachers. Now, this committee has publicly said, we were the authors. We're the ones who wrote the framework. Well, in October 2010, we know that the College Board conducted what they call a validation study. They sent something, we don't know what, to 58 colleges. We don't know who they sent it to. And they got something back, but once again, we don't know what they got back. And 2 years later, they posted the framework. There's an unexplained 2-year gap between sending something to 58 colleges, receiving something, we don't know what, and then posting it. And oh, by the way, 4 of those 58 colleges don't even give credit to AP. Well, we can't blame Oklahoma. Not one single Oklahoma teacher was on either of these 2 committees, and they didn't send anything to any university or college in Oklahoma, so we can't blame Oklahoma for the framework. Oklahoma had 0 input into this. But we still have this question. And the question is, why? Where did this actually come from? And the secret to where it came from can actually be found in the old topical outline and in the new framework. If you go to the old topical outline, it turns out that it had 12 themes. Now, one of those themes was American identity, an important theme. Who are we? Well, we learned from the old framework, which was in place for the last 30 years or more, that American identity were views, I'm quoting, of the American national character and ideas of American exceptionalism. Let's underscore that. American exceptionalism, our unique national character, our mission to be a force of good, of freedom and democracy at home and around the world, that we will pay any price and bear any burden for, was in, for over 30 years, the topical outline. And it also said we'll recognize regional differences within the context of what it means to be an American. Now, this would be a very traditional approach to American identity, our national character, the theme of American exceptionalism, and of course, sectionalism, north, south, and west. Well, let's take a look at this exact same theme in the new framework. What does it say? Well, the new framework takes a different view. It says this theme of, and I'm quoting, of national American identity focuses on group identities in U.S. history, with special attention given to the formation of gender, class, racial, and ethnic identities. Now, compare the two. American exceptionalism is gone. It's been scrubbed out, and all the people and all the great documents that embody it, gone. Here's part of your explanation for what happens. Instead of what unites us, our common core values, we have an emphasis upon what has divided us as a people. Okay, this happened, but why? Well, believe it or not, we have an answer for that, and it will surprise you. In fact, we just got irrefutable evidence of it. One of the key members of the first committee was a Colorado University professor named Dr. Fred Anderson. Now, Dr. Anderson was interviewed just last week on Colorado Public Radio, and he was asked about American exceptionalism. And here's what he said. He called the idea of American exceptionalism, quote, a fascinating concept. Effectively, said Dr. Anderson, it's a faith position. It's sort of like intelligent design. It can't be disproven or proven by evidence. Now, we now know that Dr. Anderson had a very significant influence on the themes and the skills and on the framework. It is his view in numerous books and writing that the single most important event in American history was not the founding of this country, but the conquest of the Native Americans. And that's why there's such an overemphasis on Native Americans in the first 3 units, and why American exceptionalism from the Mayflower Compact to the City on a Hill sermon to Roger Williams and religious freedom have all been scrubbed out. The overwhelming emphasis is upon conflict with Native Americans because, you see, this sets us up to be an imperialistic power, which is one of the main themes. Now, moving forward into the second committee, we now know that an NYU professor, Dr. Bender, had a very significant impact on the second committee. Now, it's Dr. Bender's view that we should stop presenting American history as a parochial history of our country. It should be internationalized, global, what he calls transnational perspective. And in fact, if you look through the framework over and over again in the framework and on the exam, you'll see the word global, global, global. Now, it's been commented upon that, gee, the only mention of George Washington was a little half sentence that he gave a farewell address. It'd be as if South Africa commissioned a new framework and the only mention of Nelson Mandela was he gave a really good address when at the end of his life. But actually, there's a reason why the farewell address is there, and there's a reason why the farewell address was on the sample test. You see, the committee and the authors who take a global approach don't actually approve of the farewell address, because the farewell address said America should attend to its national interests. That's not what the globalists think. So when you look at the exam and the questions, well, this farewell address caused a lot of mischief. It's the reason why the United States did not sign on to the Versailles Treaty. And then they have a question, when did Washington's influence finally come to an end? And the answer is World War II. By the way, that's the only mention of World War II on the sample exam, and it is worth noting, astonishing fact, that if you turn to the beginning of section 3 in the framework, which starts at 1754 or 1763, just after the French and Indian War, you have a whole page devoted to Native American relations in 1763. More space is given to that topic than World War I and World War II combined. Now, what does this mean for Oklahoma? It puts Oklahoma AP U.S. history teachers in a real predicament. The standards of Oklahoma actually begin after the Civil War. The A-Push course begins in 1491. 1491. But if you just take a look at apples to apples, the standards of Oklahoma, which are very good, by the way, from post-Civil War to the present. Last night I read through it and I checked off things that are in the Oklahoma standards that aren't in the framework. Oh my goodness. Thomas Edison, sorry. Teddy Roosevelt, the big stick, the Panama Canal, the Roosevelt Corollary, sorry, not there. William Jennings Bryan may give his Cross of Gold speech in the Oklahoma standards, not in the framework. And a shocker, the Dust Bowl, not in the framework. The Holocaust, as was mentioned before, not in the framework. The Berlin blockade, the Cuban Missile Crisis, event after event. Now, there's only so much time in the school year. And so to say, well, we'll do both. We'll do the Oklahoma standards and we'll do the Colorado standards is asking for a we'll do the Oklahoma standards and we'll do the College Board framework is asking for a superhuman effort. I don't think there's enough time to do it. And so, to those I'm speaking to, I want to echo what the previous speaker said. The time has come to say no to a private company, unelected, responsible to no one. The state legislatures of Oklahoma, we call upon you, take a look at this document and then speak out and let the College Board know that they have done wrong, that they are attempting to impose a nationalized curriculum, and we're just not going to stand for it because this is not what we want our young kids to be taught. Thank you very much.
How often do they revise this test? You mentioned a 30-year-old test. How often do they go through revisions is my first question.
That's a very good question. Now, the topical outline had not been revised for at least 20 years or so. And it did need to be updated, needed a better unit on the period from President Reagan's election up to, say, 2000. And we all anticipated there would be some refinement and some extension. I personally thought the 5 pages might go to 7, let's say. I was shocked when I pushed print and out came this massive document.
My second question is, I don't know if you had the benefit of seeing our slides, so this may be for Dr. McClarty. How does this AP impact our teaching of Oklahoma history? That was what I wanted to ask on that one slide.
I'm very sorry. Could someone repeat? Could the chairperson repeat the question?
She's asking about the teaching of Oklahoma history, which...
How does this AP test impact the teaching of Oklahoma history to our usually 8th or 9th graders? There was a slide that mentioned that.
That's an interesting question because the first part of U.S. history in Oklahoma is actually taught in the 8th grade. And that's where they do the colonial period. So that's a real problem for 8th grade teachers because in this framework, the colonial period is the period where it's probably the most controversial part of the framework. And so if I'm an 8th grade teacher, to help prepare my students, especially my better students for the high school course, I'm going to be forced to deal with some of these concepts. You see, that's the key. The College Board has refused to change so much as one word of these concepts, and that, in effect, imposes this structure upon the teachers who are teaching American history. You're free to talk about it, but there it is. They set the rules.
Thank you.
You're most welcome.
Representative Canaday for a question.
Thank you very much. And I'm not currently teaching AP U.S. History or AP Government, but I did for years, served on various committees, creating not frameworks, but rubrics. I've never heard that term framework. It was always a rubric that was created per subject area as possible answers to questions. And enrollment is a voluntary procedure, and many schools in my district, my legislative district, do not take it. So take AP classes, or the school does not offer. So it is a voluntary. Is that not correct?
Yes.
Okay. Then let me ask you, and this is a question, a typical question, and with this type of question, do you feel like there is built-in bias based on this question of U.S. government? Because all AP open essay questions begin with, unless they've changed, discuss the extent to which. Is that not correct?
That used to be correct. I have the test, and I have to tell you, that's no longer correct.
So what has it been, if I might?
What do you say?
What's it been replaced with on an open essay question?
The sample exam now has, instead of providing 4 35-minute questions and the kids do 2. They actually have just 2 and the kids do 1.
Okay.
And I have the questions right here. And the first one, they do one of these, is evaluate the extent to which transatlantic interactions from 1600 to 1763 contributed to maintaining continuity as well as fostering change in labor systems in the British North American colonies. Let me decode that for you. That's the global approach. That's the international approach. What are they concerned with? The plantation system and the slave trade. The best way to answer that question is to regurgitate what's in the framework. It would actually be very difficult for a student to argue with that question. It's presented as a fait accompli. You got to talk about transatlantic interactions from 1600 to 1763, which means slavery. And remember, slavery and the plantation system are given tremendous emphasis in the first 3 units. Religious freedom, democratic institutions given short shift.
Follow up.
As serving on these committees, and maybe they don't have teachers serving on them anymore, but we would have created a rubric of 10 different levels with 4 different options within those 10 levels as a possible appropriate answer. And I guess my question then, sir, is have they done away with the rubric? And if so, would there be bias that you would see in this question that I know I have presented to students and helped develop in a committee? And that is, discuss the extent to which the 14th Amendment provides both substantive and procedural due process. Would that be a typical government question in an AP test?
That would be a typical question in the past. Now, you asked an extremely good question. Document-based questions, known as DBQs, and free response questions were graded based upon a pre-existing rubric exactly as you described. That has now been changed, you'll be surprised to hear. And instead, there's a new, what they call, analytic system of grading. Now, I really don't quite know what's involved in it because there's a real problem. 1 year ago on AP Central, we had a trove of around 400 graded essays from 1999 to 2013, high, medium, and low. And we had all these rubrics. But we don't have that. We just don't have that. And so the result is that's all gone. And so the result is, I have to be candid, I don't really know what they mean by a new analytic grading. I just don't know.
All right, are there other questions from the committee? Yes, ma'am.
Representative Cootie, I would like also you and the committee to be aware that we have Lori Boyd here. She is the AP Director from Oklahoma State Board of Education, and she would be available for you to direct questions to as well.
Thank you very much. That was my next step, and I'm so appreciative that Laura is here. I have to tell you, members, that I did invite someone from College Board to come and talk with us today and explain their point of view. And for a while, I thought that the local person, College Board person, was going to come. He told me he would come. But now he tells me that he no longer works for them. And the other people are not in Oklahoma City, and so no one is available from College Board to come and talk with us today. So I am so thankful that Laura Boyd is here, and would you come to the mic, please, and could we address, I don't know if our members have any questions for you, but if you can explain this AP point of view, if everyone is as concerned about this as I am, and I think you probably are, we have great concerns. We realize how important AP U.S. history is to our students. We realize how important it is that our students do well on our AP exams. But this is very frightening. I'll just throw out the first question. Can you tell us where is College Board on this? Tell us what you know about this.
Well, first of all, I'll state a disclaimer. I am not an authority on AP U.S. history, but I do know a little bit about how College Board has functioned. I have been an AP teacher for 24 years, and I want to say that I have appreciated being one and have appreciated the strides that College Board emphasizes in building rigor in our students and preparing them for college readiness. And so I am a testament to the fact that AP works, and I am proud of that. However, I am somewhat concerned about the direction that the AP U.S. history test framework has taken. One thing I would like to say is that, and I think one of the ladies already alluded to this, but if we look back 10 years ago at the number of students who were taking AP exams, it was somewhere in the neighborhood of 400,000. Last year's test examination included, I want to say, 2.3 million exams. 2.3 million students taking exams and 4.1 million total exams taken. So there is this snowball effect inside. There's this snowball gaining momentum inside College Board right now, in my opinion. Students and teachers alike know that it's a working system. We are trying to be all-inclusive in our in the number of students that we want to be partakers of the AP courses, because we know that deems them more successful in college. We just know that. There's a lot of evidence to prove that, and I'll be glad to share that with you. However, because that is true, and because College Board is subject to no one and is a self-sustaining agency, I think we are very apt to participate in it because we know it works and are finding it difficult to know how to get out of it. So what I'm saying is it's big and it's working on its own, and it doesn't need us, and it can pretty much do what it wants. So when I began looking at the old framework versus the new framework, I said, well, I can't really see in print that much difference. Dr. Krieger has pointed out some very specific things that are true and were a little bit alarming to me as well. He's done a much better job than I could do explaining that. But I thought, well, really the litmus test for the direction that College Board intends to go can be found by looking at a sample test. So I got my hands on one, and just as Dr. Krieger has said, there is very little emphasis on those things that I consider very important to our American history. And that scares me because history itself tells us that one change from truth as far as our ideology is concerned and what message we present to kids who are impressionable at 16, 17, and 18 really determines what kind of country we're going to have thereafter. And I am frankly a little bit alarmed at the emphasis on just the nuances in the sample test. One example, rather than using words like entrepreneurship, we have a real twist on that, big business. And that's just one example. That may not mean anything to you, but to me it does, because anytime we veer away from what has been understood to be true, and we put a little bent on it, then we're going to be pumping out students with that same kind of mentality. And I'm a little bit fearful of pumping out a generation of students who have no pride in the America that their grandfathers fought to save and build. And so I think that's all I have to say.
All right, thank you. Well, we have questions for you. The first one is from Representative Thompson. Do you want to ask this of Mrs. Lloyd or Dr. Krieger? He's still with us.
Dr. Krieger, can I ask you a question?
I wish you would.
Okay, and this could be for either, but I was wondering, who is the president of the College Board?
David Coleman.
And can I ask, at least from my recollection, was he not one of the architects of the Common Core?
Yes.
Yeah.
There you go.
Hence, maybe one of our concerns in the past for those members that have lobbed jabs during the day. I just wanted to bring that to your attention. One thing I was wondering, I watched a news show this morning, and they were asking students at Harvard who has something to the effect of who has impacted trouble in the world more, America or ISIS? Who is most likely to affect world peace, America or ISIS? And the answers from the students was America. And so I wondered if part of the concern of what we're seeing here is the kind of feeding that cultural change within our own country, and since we're most vulnerable in our history to our students, would you agree that that's where we're most vulnerable to change the culture of our students?
I agree 100%.
Thank you. Dr. Boyd, are teachers still involved in these committees that I served on, both in terms of creating the rubric as well as questions?
As far as I know, that is true. As College Board, and I've tried to read several of their defense statements as so much distaste for the new framework has arisen, and they continue to say that they have a board of 400 or 500 college professors and high school AP U.S. history teachers who are serving to make changes to the framework and that sort of thing. However, I think we have to be, even though that's true and that's wonderful, it's always great to get a broad perspective on things, but if our bank of contributors is all in agreement that the test ought to look one way, then we don't have a whole lot to say so.
If I might follow up along that same, not a little different line, is if I am an administrator in a school and I'm feeling discomfort with AP, there's a perfect option, and that is concurrent enrollment. So why are we it's not being forced on us, is it in any way?
No, sir, and that's a wonderful question as well. And in Oklahoma, we do have those two things working simultaneously. And since I'm the AP director, it's my job to talk about how good AP is. So I want to do that because I know that there are lots of wonderful things about AP, and I'm sure Dr. Krieger would agree with that. But no, the answer is no. We are not forced to do any AP work. There are some studies that show, and these are the ones I typically present to principals at high schools, there are studies that show that students who take AP and then go on to a four-year university versus those students who had concurrent enrollment at a local community college, that their GPAs are a little bit higher their freshman year and subsequent years in college.
Absolutely true.
The AP scores are high.
Students,
AP students have higher scores than current enrollment.
yes, and the studies, that particular study I'm referring to only constitutes the use of one AP course in the student's high school background. So that one course makes a huge difference, one AP course does.
And along that,
Can I say something? Okay, thank you. Thank you. I would like to say 5,000 students in Oklahoma take AP. That's a lot. That's AP US. There are 34 other AP courses. Now, I want to be very clear. I have historically, all my career, been a very strong proponent of the AP program. Believe me, I have. But everything changed 2 years ago when the College Board selected a new president. And that has politicized the AP program. And we're seeing the first evidence of that in AP US history. But this is really important because next up is AP Government, and then AP US Government, and then AP European History. And they'll take those topical outlines from those courses, and next thing you know, we'll have a 142-page framework for AP Government, and then we'll have a 142-page framework for AP European History, and so on down the line. So it's a domino effect. Now, I don't actually know how many students in Oklahoma took an AP test last year. I know it was 5,000 in U.S. history, but I'm quite certain it was many thousands more in other subjects. And so the line's got to be drawn somewhere. If we're not careful, we will have a nationalized curriculum which will circumvent the 10th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, and it will usurp your own state standards. And we just can't allow this to happen. The time to stop it is right now with U.S. history.
Representative Casey for a question for Mrs. Boyd or for
Dr. Krieger.
Dr. Krieger.
My question would be, have no idea what's going on the East Coast. You probably have a better feel with us, talking about this in Oklahoma. Where's it going nationally?
Excellent question. Even as we speak, right now, this minute, there are hearings in South Carolina. Already, the Republican National Committee has unanimously passed a resolution calling upon the College Board to make changes, but they ignored it. A couple weeks ago, the Texas State Board of Education passed a resolution admonishing the College Board. And so today we have Oklahoma hearing. At the same time, South Carolina, Tennessee is looking into this matter. California is looking into this matter. Throughout this year, I expect that state after state after state will take a look at this as the true knowledge of what's in this framework starts to diffuse and people start to realize just what is truly at stake on this.
I have a question, Dr. Krieger.
Yes.
What is David Coleman's background? Can you tell us a little bit about his history?
Yes, I can. Mr. Coleman has never taught a day in his life. Not one day. And yet, Mr. Coleman is arguably the most influential educator, quote unquote, in America. Actually, he grew up, he had a very liberal background. His mother is the president of Bennington College, and so he does have a very liberal perspective on things. That's okay. This is America. People can have different perspectives. I have no problem with that. He went to Yale, and then he was a Rhodes Scholar. Good for him. He applied to be a teacher in New York City, where they hire thousands of teachers each year, but was turned down. Did not become a teacher, but he did become an entrepreneur. That's kind of interesting because it was mentioned before, free enterprise and entrepreneurship are not in the framework. Instead, what's there is big business interests. And when you read it, you'll find out that big business interests were constantly battling conservationists, labor. They're presented in a very negative light. And so Mr. Coleman founded some companies and he became involved in the Common Core effort. A critical moment was when he and a couple of his colleagues went out to Seattle and met Bill Gates and persuaded the Gates Foundation to finance the Common Core effort. And they took advantage of a confluence of factors, including the recession back in 2008. And before we knew it, Common Core was imposed on 45 of the 50 states in America. His work, he thought, done with Common Core, he then was appointed 2 years ago, this month, president of the College Board. Now, that was really a pivotal moment because the very first thing he announced was, we're going to realign the SAT. We're going to turn the SAT and we're going to change it. We're going to have a redone SAT and it will be aligned with, guess what? Common Core. And that new redefined SAT is going to be out in March of 2016. And then he turned to AP. Now, as was pointed out before, there's been explosive growth in the AP program in general. 500,000 take AP US History, but there are 34 other AP courses. And so if you view all this Common Core, SAT, AP as a push for what some have called Fed-led ed, a nationalized curriculum which usurps the 10th Amendment to the Constitution, here it is. And so, Mr. Coleman, and I think this is fair to say, the most polarizing figure in American education is actually the person in charge of the AP program. And it's interesting, we have called upon Mr. Coleman from the very beginning to look at this APUSH course. The Republican National Committee asked him to. He ignored it. The state of Texas asked him to. Numerous writers have said, you know, you got to take a look at this. And as of this minute, not one word of the concept outline has been changed. The College Board has remained intransigent.
Thank you, Dr. Krieger.
You're welcome.
For a question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question is to Dr. Krieger as well. I'm just curious. I mean, you said that there's been a huge expansion of the program, and you know it costs money to do this. I mean, where's the money coming from? Do you know how they're funded? And
yes.
And has there been a big influx of money in regard to this, trying to drive this initiative?
Yes. Here's what we know. This will surprise you. The College Board, which is legally a not-for-profit entity, actually had revenues last year of just under $800 million. Now, half of that came from the AP program. You see, the AP program is very, very lucrative for the College Board. In addition, they have received, this will shock you, an average of $40 million in grants from the Department of Education. It's unbelievable. Plus, they've received various grants from foundations, and I'll give you one guess to name one of the foundations that has been sending them money. So the College Board has a lot of money. It's an entrenched institution with a great deal of power, and it is going to take a lot of pushback, a lot of people saying no for the College Board to budge, because you see, Mr. Coleman and the College Board realize the extreme importance of AP US History. If they can win this battle on AP US History, they'll win the battles on all the other AP courses. They'll tie it already with the SAT and then Common Core, and we will have their goal of a nationalized curriculum. Oh, and of course, that curriculum will be extremely biased, needless to say. It will reflect their biases.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I was very curious.
Thank you so much, Dr. Krieger. It breaks my heart that we have to adjourn now, but we have to let our members go and eat lunch so they can be back for a 1:30 meeting. Your being with us today has been invaluable.
Thank you.
I hope that you will allow us to contact you.
I wish you would.
Because I think we're all extremely concerned about this.
Good.
So thank you very much for being with us today.
Thank you very much.
And Dr. McClarty, I'm sure you want to say some things as we go.
Okay, yes, just final.
Would you wait just a minute, please? We'll be through in just a minute. Let her close,
Just
please.
a final statement on this.
Yes.
Thank goodness we all got through history before these changes took effect, and appreciate the providential history that our country has had. And I know you have witnessed a couple of decades of history yourselves here, and you've seen, as I have, a chipping away at the structure of America from inside and from outside, chipping away, a weakening. Well, if this APUSH goes through, it'll be like putting dynamite at the foundation. So I ask for your help to stop it.